These are things that you should let your department heads take care of because they're going to do it better than you. Know what you're good at and delegate the rest of the people who are good at doing what they're good at. Okay, so now you've got your script, you've got your budget, you've got your schedule, you have your investors, and you actually have your money. You're making a movie. Congratulations. So now we know we're going to make the movie. Now we got a plan for it. Rule number 1, the more pre-production you can do, the more prepared you are, the better your movie's going to be. It's way less expensive to do your planning during pre-production than it is to fumble around on the set because you didn't figure something out. So you take a lot of time to do pre-production properly. Plan and replan everything. Okay, do all your strategies and all your contingency plans and everything before you get on set. When you're on set, you probably have, let's say you have a crew of 30 people and, and 10 actors and 20 extras and everything. Every day is costing you a lot of money to be on set. So you don't want to spend a lot of time planning things of stuff that you didn't think about before. In pre-production, it's just you being the producer, maybe the director, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. And it's a lot less expensive. Tons of people working with you. And you can take the time to really consider and think about and strategize all of these things. Take your time with pre-production. Do not rush pre-production. That's your time to do all your major planning and strategies. So what's involved in pre-production? There's a long list of things. I'm not going to list them all right? One of the things you have to do is hire your crew and do your casting. Generally, if you're not the director of the movie, it starts with the director. There's a whole thing about figuring out who the right director is. They have to have good vision, they have to be able to work at the speed that you can work at. They have to be collaborative with you. They have to understand your limitations. There's a lot of dynamics and relationships. It's not just about who's made a film before, although it's important that they're talented, obviously. This is a business decision and they are going to be the captain of your ship. So make sure you interview them well, take your time, check them out, get to know them, make sure they know you really well and they know what your budget is and your priorities and everything about it, because you don't want to clash with them on set. You want to make sure that everybody's under the same understanding going in. Director, by far the single most important person on your shoot. Now, the director might have certain people that they've worked with before. So she might say, hey, I've got this cinematographer that I've been using for the last 3 films, and I know that she can work at the pace I can work at. And she might say, can you hire my cinematographer? And, you interview the cinematographer, and if she's good, you hire her too, because it works well. They might say, I have, a first assistant director who I'm in sync with. The director might recommend a few people who they want to bring to the table. Now, if they don't, you're going to have to interview other people for the rest of your crew. But generally, you're going to hire what we call your keys, which are the department heads. So you're going to hire the head of lighting, the grip head. You're going to get a line producer who will hopefully bring in a second and some other people under them, PAs and things like that. You might have a location manager. You might not. That might be part of the producer. You're probably going to have some type of art department, wardrobe and hair. So you're going to hire 5 or 6 people who are going to lead each of those departments. And my recommendation, spend your time interviewing and hiring well for the key people, the department heads, and then let them do the rest. All right, give them a budget and say, this is what you need to work within. Here's the means that I have. And can you go get the right people? Because they'll know more of the right people than you will. You can be involved in that process. You can interview them. You can meet them, as you should, by the way. But let them bring in the people that they work with well. Like I say, film's a collaborative process. And if they're collaborating well and they have history with these people, then they know. Sometimes that doesn't work out well because they're hiring their friends who aren't necessarily the best for the job. So you got to be careful of that. It's a monumental task to hire, say, 30 crew people within a couple weeks. You don't have time to interview so many people and meet them all, but you just balance it out with your time and what the trust that you have for your department heads. Then you have casting. You can cast directly. There's a lot of sites where you can put casting calls out and try to find cast yourself. I have found over the years, even in super low budget productions, that it's really good to have a casting director. And they're going to charge you a fee, but they're generally really good at what they do, most of them, and they're super well connected with all of the agents and actors. And this is whether you're doing like SAG union or non-union. get the casting director in the place where you're going to shoot, because they're going to know the local talent. And chances are you're not going to be able to fly people around because you're not going to have the budget to do that. If they're a good casting director, which I've had good experiences with casting directors, once they get the idea of who you are, what you're looking for, what your story is, chances are they've worked with a lot of the local talent and they'll know who's right. All right, so that's a good idea to do that. And the rest is equipment. Your department heads will say to you, this is what we need. They'll give you a list. Here's what we need, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're a good negotiator, get involved with equipment. If your department heads are good at that or connected, often, by the way, they have their own equipment. I mean, they'll want to rent it to you, which is no problem, because if they're giving you a fair deal and they already know how their equipment works, then it's a win-win for both of you, as long as it's the right equipment. Make sure you pay attention to that. Either go in and negotiate a good deal or, work with your heads to get the right equipment. Same with things like vehicles. And then locations. I tend to like to use a location manager again, because they have the time, they know what's available and what isn't, and who's willing to work with you. Like, say you need a house. They know 10 people who are willing to rent their houses, and you're not going to be able to find that very easily. That's an expense also that I kind of think is worth it, a location manager, because also they find it, they work it out, they set it up, they clean it up, they do everything. And by the way, if you get the wrong location, you get there and you got a crew and 30 people are sitting there and the person says, oh, well, I don't want you to use this, this, and this, it could cost you a whole day of shooting. Then, of course, all of your props, wardrobe, makeup, these are things that you should let your department heads take care of, because they're going to do it better than you. Know what you're good at and delegate the rest of the people who are good at doing what they're good at. All right? You have to have a hand in everything. You have to know what's going on, because ultimately you're spending the money. Make sure you have a good handle on it and that people aren't spending your money improperly, and just make sure they know how much they have to spend and deploy. Catering also, that's a tough, that's an interesting one, because that could be expensive and it can get out of hand. I usually give catering to one of my people in my production department. Sometimes I've hired a caterer, sometimes we've just bought food locally. So these are all little niche things that we can talk about in another session if you're interested. All right, insurance. You need production insurance. Don't think you don't, because locations aren't going to let you in. Equipment companies won't rent to you. I mean, you need to have an insurance package. And also liability, in case somebody gets hurt or you break equipment or gets stolen or something like this, you need to be covered. And then obviously there's going to be legal fees, because you need contracts, unless you're good at that. I mean, I generally do my own contracts because I am a lawyer. You'll need a bookkeeper or a production accountant who can keep the expenses properly, unless you're really good at that. Depends on what you want to do, how much time you have. So you've hired all these people and now they're working, but they're not necessarily working on day one. Some of them you're going to give a few days to get set up, and some of them will get a couple of weeks. So you'll discuss with each of them what they need and how much time they need for setup. Give them the time they need to do this properly, because if they're well planned out, then you'll save a lot of effort and time and money on set. I'm a big believer in doing pre-production properly and not rushing it, and doing it thoroughly and comprehensively. So the other thing you need in pre-production, obviously, is the director's going to have to do the shot list. They're going to have to do their own shooting schedule with the cinematographer. Based on your schedule, how much they're going to shoot, how much coverage they're hoping to get, how long the setups are going to take. They have to really, really plan each shooting day really well. Otherwise, they're going to get behind. Always happens. It notoriously happens on independent shoots, because everybody takes a little too much time and nobody's really watching the clock, and then you run out of time. So the director and the first AD need to really plan out every day meticulously in terms of how many times they're going to cover the scene, from what angles they're going to cover it, how long the lighting setups are going to take, and really estimate how each day is going to go, and then put in some contingencies as well in case there's, say, equipment failure, or somebody gets sick, somebody gets hurt, or weather issues or that type of thing. When I've directed my movies, I've had what I want to happen, what will happen in case that doesn't happen, and what will happen in case the in case doesn't happen. Plan A, plan B, and plan C. And often I go to plan C, because you don't want to have to juggle on set in case something happens. You want to already have a plan in place. So for instance, let's say you're shooting outdoors and plan A is to, shoot the scene, but all of a sudden it starts raining and you can't shoot. All right, so plan B would be, well, there's another scene that we can maybe move indoors to a location that's right beside it. But plan B maybe is the lot location is not available anymore. So what's plan C? What else can you cover while you have your crew sitting there? While it's raining, what can you do? What kind of pickup shots can you do? Or what coverage can you get based on the cast that you have there or what's available? And hopefully you never use any of this planning because everything goes well. But one thing we know on a shoot is that not everything goes well. There's always going to be issues. All right, so the more planning you do, the better off you're going to be. Well, producers always in a rush. They're never looking at what the artistic side should be when they're planning. They're always just thinking money, money, money. Yeah, they are thinking money, money, money because they have to. Someone has to.